This is the chitas of Tisha B'Av itself. Yeah? And this against HaKedesh, the Alter Rebbe again is talking about the from giving tzedakah. And again about the idea that when a person gives tzedakah, he reveals Sev of Kalama, the infinite light of the Eibishter. What's unusual about this Igeres HaKedesh is the Alter Rebbe is going to say why tzedakah, it makes you a keli for Sev of Kalama. And how come in the act of giving tzedakah, there's an idea really which like amounts to a Mesiras Nefesh type of avodah. And because there's a Mesiras Nefesh type of avodah in it, it reveals Sev of Kalama. So let's begin. Daled. This is Tanya Chitas of Tisha B'Av itself. And Yisrael Negalim Nala B'Tzedakah. The Yidden are redeemed only through tzedakah. Shneim, as the pasuk says, V'shaveh B'Tzedakah. The captives are redeemed through tzedakah, right? Tziyim b'mishpat ipada. Tzadikim are redeemed b'mishpat because they deserve it. V'shaveh Baalei Tshuva are redeemed b'tzedakah because it's tzedakah of the Eibishter. The Rebbe says even though Baalei Tshuva v'shaveha means they actually did tshuva, return to the Eibishter. The idea that the Eibishter gives about tshuva also a chance to do tshuva is an inyan from tzedakah. Bottom line is that tzedakah is connected to tshuva, and tshuva is connected to Mashiach. So now, what do we want to know about tzedakah? Ksiv, he brings the second pasuk. Tzedek lefanav yahalech. Tzedek walks before the person's premise. Tzedek, righteousness, walks lefanav to the premise of a person. Yahalech walks. What's the rest of the pasuk? Do you know? The rest of the pasuk is quoted on 212 at the very top of the page. V'yasim lederech piyamav, and it creates a path for the person's steps. Pa'amav means the steps of a person. So that sounds like a fun of Yahalach. Tzedek walks Yahalech before the person's previous. Yasm derech pa'amav. So the Rebbe asks a kashem, how about the lemema yelech? He should have said tzedek, that when a person gives tzedakah, the fun of Yelech, it walks ahead of you, the tzedakah you've given. And he said tzedek the fun of Yahalech, right? And I'm going to cheat and tell you, tzedek the fun of Yahalech, through tzedakah, you walk to your own pnimius. Not tzedek the fun of tzedek walks before you, but tzedek Lafan of Yahalach, when you give tzedakah, it leads you into your own pnimius, into your own bligavul of the neshama, and that's why it's a keli for Sev of Kalam. And as I said to you before, that this again, the Rebbe explains why tzedakah is a keli for Sev of Kalam. But anyway, we'll get to it later on. Acha Inyan. The answer to this question is a third pasuk. We started off with the idea of tzedakah being connected to tshuva and geyula. We continued the idea of tzedek lafan of Yahalach, and now we're going into a third Inyan. If it says in the pasuk, to you says my heart, Bakshu Fun seek my pnimius. Now you know who's talking to whom? L'cha amalibi. L'cha amalibi means you're talking to yourself. Your inner heart is saying to your outer you, l'cha, to the external person, amalibi, the inner person is saying, Bakshu Fun, look for my pnimius. You understand? You want to look for your own pnimius. That's right. So it's spoken in third person because the pnimius person is saying to the chetenis person, Bakshu Fun, Pirish. Baksho pnimis alev. Look for your inner heart. Of course, the inner heart is not based on the midas of a person, because the midas are limited, because they come from the seichel of the person. The pnimis of a person comes from the etzam and neshama. Gehine, in the flame of the element of fire, which is godly, which is in the heart. In other words, skip the parenthesis. Yesed ha'eshel lekis shabalev, the element of fire, which is godly, which is in the heart. Yesh beis bechinas. There's two levels. Bechinas chitzenius, the outer dimension of the heart. But Bechinas Pnimis in the inner dimension of the heart. What's the difference? Chitzenius Alev, the outer dimension of the heart. His lahavus. This is a flame. Hamis lahavus, the person is inflamed with Avas Hashem, but you know where it comes from. Bechinas Sabina V'Hadas, from understanding and knowledge. Begidul Asad Hashem in Sei Baruch Hu, in the greatness of Hashem, which is infinite. That lihis boy nein, when a person is going to contemplate with his intellect, Begidul say the greatness of the Eivishter, and think about the Eibishter intellectually a lot, to come from this understanding to Ava, Aza, Kirish Pe'esh V'choli, a very intense love, which is like fire, which is attached to a coal, and so forth. So Chassid's love is called midas that come from Seichel. Pnimius Alev, what's the inner heart? Pnimius Alev, this is the point which is in the center of a person's heart. V'yom Kodalib, in the depth of one's heart, it's much, much higher than the person's knowledge and understanding. That it would even be possible for a person, this boy, and believe it, to contemplate with his heart, speak to also the Shem, the greatness of the Eibishter, and yet somehow it's available. The infinite heart, which is above the mind completely. As the Torah says, there's a notion of a Yid calling the Eibishter from the deepest depth, which is called daliba, from the inner dimension of the heart. For example, when it comes to Gashmis, sometimes something can be very, very important, that Shakol Chayas Adam Tolo, by the whole life of the person hangs on it. And therefore, v'negeya touches the person ad nekuda pnimis halev yad b'chal, the very innermost point of the person's heart, including that innermost point. And as a result, you can become hysterical and crazy. V'geidim leila piyamim, and it causes the person sometimes la'aseis maisim, to do deeds, or l'daber dvarim, and to speak words that are foolish. Sometimes it's less than reason, and sometimes it's more than reason. The same is also in Kedusha. A Yid serving Hashem using his heart. That sometimes a Yid serves Hashem using his heart, and he reveals what's called in Chassidus Pnimiyas Halev, the inner heart, which is an infinite fire of attachedness to the Eibishter. The reason for this is the point of the inner heart of a Jew is connected to Hashem without having to learn about Hashem, without proof of Hashem. It is inherently it's above knowledge. Hamispashet, which expands, umislabish, and it reveals itself, b'midas, in the heart, sheneldu mechabad, which come only from the Chabad, from the intelligence of a person keneda. That would be chitzonius alev. Rak, in this case, however, when we're talking about nekudas pnimis alev, bechinas ha'aras ha'chochma, it's a light from chochma elyena, which is on high, shalamayla me'abina vadas, which is above understanding and above knowledge. Ba'malubash v'gan, it is revealed and hidden, Eravaya Mamish, the infinite light of the Eibishter Mamish, K'meshikosov, as the Pasuk says, Havaya b'chochma v'gayim, Hashem hides his infinity in chochma. V'hi, in other words, this is b'chinas nitzitz alakus sheb'chol nefesh miYisrael. This is the pintel yid, which is the heart of every single Jew. So there's chitzonius alev and there's pnimius alev. And bakshufana means don't suffice with chitzonius alev, the outer heart, which is based on the mind, but bakshufana, seek the inner heart, which is based on the soul.